So now that Apple is working on a new generation of MacBook Pro that we could see as early as September 2019, let's take a look back on the previous 13 years of MacBook Pros. In January 2006, Apple made public its decision to ditch PowerPC in favor of Intel for its computers going forward. This paradigm shift was a massive move for the company, and over the course of the year, every single existing Mac was rebranded, fitted with Intel, or retired in favor of a new model. PowerBooks, Power Macs, and iBooks went out the window, and in came the MacBook, MacBook Pro, Intel iMac, Intel Mac Mini, and Mac Pro. Just think about that for a second. In 1 year, Apple completely changed its entire lineup. Granted, the MacBook Pro, Mac Mini, iMac, and the Mac Pro retained largely the same general design as their predecessors, but the internals and everything else in the lineup was completely brand new from top to bottom.
New notebook computer that we are calling the MacBook Pro. It's a new name. It's a new name because we're kind of done with Power and because we want Mac in the name of our products. So MacBook Pro.
One of the headlines of this transition was the MacBook Pro, arguably one of the most popular Pro laptops of all time. The Intel version was 4 to 5 times faster than its PowerBook predecessor. Keep in mind, the G5 PowerBook was only a year old at that point, so we're talking about a 5-fold increase in 1 year. However, the massive transition to Intel in 2006 wasn't without its hiccups. There were 5 iterations of the first MacBook Pro that fixed coil whine, sleep issues, display flickering, and airport problems. Then we get to the fact that the first wave of Intel Macs used 32-bit Core Duo processors. The iMac, MacBook Pro, MacBook, and Mac Mini were all refreshed again at the end of 2006 with 64-bit Core 2 Duos, which meant that the early 2006 variants were very quickly obsolete, losing support after 4 years at most. I'll tell you what's not obsolete, this super slick transition into today's video sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creators with over 25,000 classes in design, video production, and more. For just $10 a month, you can grab a yearly subscription to Skillshare Premium and gain unlimited access to the classes and communities that will help you hone in your digital skills. For the past 13 years, the MacBook Pro has been among the most popular tools for creators in the world. So make sure to head over to my link in the description to get a free 2 months of Skillshare Premium and make the most of your incredibly powerful tools. And now, back to the video. Despite the teething troubles of the early Intel MacBooks, the second generation, launched in 2007, brought welcome changes such as Santa Rosa Core 2 Duos that were noticeably more powerful and significantly faster NVIDIA 8600M GT graphics. Then in early 2008, there was another mild refresh that added multi-touch gestures to the MacBook Pro. This was the last version of the original MacBook Pro, and it's the one that I have. Because of the mildly refreshed Penryn processors, this guy can run macOS Mojave with a patch tool, and honestly is still very usable to this day. This design, in classic Apple form, still looks quite good to this day, and even has slimmer bezels than the 2 generations of MacBook Pros that followed it. In Geekbench 4, this machine is definitely showing its age, scoring just 2,700 in the multi-core test. Unfortunately, the 2007 and early 2008 MacBook Pros also started a rather unfortunate trend of crippling graphics card issues. Both of these models are running the fatally flawed 8600M GT that mean nearly all of them will fail eventually. Fortunately, in late 2008, the second generation of the MacBook Pro was announced.
Today we're introducing our new MacBook Pro. It's just gorgeous.
This was the wildly popular unibody MacBook Pro, which changed the way laptops were constructed even to this day and is still the preferred design for many people. Internally, the performance was incremental, with improved 9600M graphics from NVIDIA and the same Penryn Core 2 Duos, as well as a unification of the 13-inch MacBook and the 15-inch MacBook Pro to create a unified MacBook Pro family. But the real story was the new construction. Unibody meant fewer parts, cleaner lines, and a sturdier device overall. In typical Johnny Ive fashion, he explained how this new construction would be a huge benefit for the MacBook Pro, while also making the previous generation, which was just 2.5 years old at this point, look like an ancient relic.
Traditionally, notebooks are made from multiple parts. But the problem is when you have multiple parts, you add size and weight, and you increase the opportunity for failure. And the huge breakthrough that we had was to replace all of those parts with just one part. And that one part we called the unibody.
This generation of MacBook Pro saw huge internal changes over its 4-year lifespan while looking almost exactly the same. In 2010, the 15-inch MacBook Pro became the first Apple laptop to use Core i5 and i7 processors, and in 2011, the 13-inch joined in on the fun, while the 15-inch became the first to use quad-core processors. The 2011 MacBook Pro was actually a really significant upgrade. The 15-inch from 2011 hasn't really aged well, as it heralded the return of crippling graphics issues, so as such it tends to be overlooked, but was in fact a huge performance gain over the previous generation. In fact, the first MacBook Pro that I ever owned was a Sandy Bridge 2011 13-inch MacBook Pro, so it didn't have any graphics issues. That thing carried me all the way through the early days of my channel in 2015. The 2011 was overshadowed the following year by what is largely considered the best MacBook Pro ever made, the mid-2012 unibody MacBook Pro. Improved Ivy Bridge processors and NVIDIA GT650M graphics that were much faster and didn't fail catastrophically made this MacBook a great performer, while also retaining the upgradability for which this generation was famous.
So what's next? Let me make a little bit of room on the slide here.
2012 also saw the introduction of another landmark in the Mac world, the first Retina display in a MacBook Pro. This was actually announced at WWDC, and its specs were carried on to the unibody MacBook Pro, which stuck around for a couple of months before being retired in 2013. The Retina differentiated itself from the unibody by featuring new, slimmer, flash-based architecture,
all-flash architecture,
and a world-class IPS display that blew anything else in the laptop world out of the water, at least for a little while. Ironically, it also brought back the trend of graphics issues, although this one was decidedly Apple's fault, because before you could kind of put some blame on NVIDIA and AMD for designing some faulty graphics processors. However, in this case, it was entirely Apple's fault because they used really crap soldering on an important voltage regulator, which fails, and then you pretty much can't turn on the device unless you replace the soldering on that chip. In late 2013, the MacBook Pro saw its next significant upgrade with Haswell processors and improved NVIDIA GT750M graphics on some 15-inch models. While the design remained the same through 2015, these Retina MacBook Pros were more efficient than their predecessors. The late 2013 dual graphics MacBook Pro remains my top pick for a used MacBook Pro due to its great value, performance, and reliability. This model was apparently so good that Apple felt it didn't need to change, so in 2014 it was barely refreshed, the only difference being in clock speeds and making 16GB of RAM standard on 15-inch models. Strangely, from 2013 to 2015, Apple decided that the base model 15-inch MacBook Pro didn't need dedicated graphics, so you gotta watch out because a lot of those things are running Iris graphics. Fortunately, this trend ended in 2016, and since then, every single 15-inch MacBook Pro has dedicated graphics. In 2015, the Retina MacBook Pro was refreshed one last time. First, in the spring, the 13-inch received the new Force Touch trackpad and 5th gen Intel chips. Then, over the summer, the 15-inch received the same Force Touch trackpad and much faster AMD R9 M370X graphics on the top-tier 15-inch model. Interestingly, Apple actually used Haswell processors on 3 consecutive updates of the 15-inch MacBook Pro, from late 2013 all the way up until 2016, when the Touch Bar was introduced. Then in October of 2016, we got the current generation of MacBook Pro, the controversial Touch Bar models. These were a pretty significant update, even if it wasn't everyone's favorite. We got a new, thinner design, Thunderbolt 3 only, Skylake CPUs, and the notorious Butterfly keyboard. In terms of performance, the Skylake chips really aren't any faster than preceding Haswell MacBook Pros, but the Radeon Pro graphics in the 15-inch models were significantly more powerful than the R9 M370 and Iris Pro from the 2015 model. Today, the MacBook Pro is running 9th gen Core i7 and Core i9 processors on the 15-inch models, and starting in 2018, quad-core i5s and i7s in the 13-inch. The graphics really haven't changed much on the 15-inch models, which are still using old Polaris architecture, but there is a Vega option on high-end 15-inch configs. It's no secret that the current generation of 15-inch MacBook Pros have been polarizing, especially when it comes to thermals, keyboard, and port selection. However, we can't deny that the last 2 updates to the MacBook Pro have been absolutely massive in terms of performance gains in CPU processing power. Take a look at this chart, which compares Geekbench scores for the top CPU options of every single 15-inch MacBook Pro since 2007. You can see a huge jump during the transition from Core 2 Duos through Sandy Bridge Core i7s. Then there are minor incremental improvements, though from late 2013 to 2017 it's almost completely flat, even trending down a little bit. Then we see absolutely massive gains in 2018 and 19 as the core counts increase and we start to see Core i9 processors. That huge flatline from 2013 all the way through 2017 is exactly what happens when there is no competition in the CPU space. For the middle part of this decade, Intel had absolutely no motivation to be increasing core count and performance because they just weren't really competing with anyone. AMD didn't have a viable alternative. Now though, competition from AMD has lit a fire under Intel's bum, and this graph is the result. As I said in a previous video, I do not recommend the 2019 MacBook Pro. Sure, it's a huge gain in terms of CPU performance, but it doesn't really offer any other improvements over the 2018 MacBook Pro, and seeing as this generation in general likely won't be around a year from now, it's probably best to wait unless you really need the upgrade. When the new generation of MacBook Pro comes out, it very well might blow your socks off. They might fix the thermal issues, they might have a really amazing display, new keyboard, it might be amazing. Alternatively, if it ends up sucking, the 2019 MacBook Pro has gotten pretty good reviews and you'll be able to get one refurbished and save a good chunk of change. Either way, it only helps you to wait. So pretty much, unless your MacBook Pro is currently on fire, I would just hold off for at least a couple of months. So thank you guys for watching this video. I certainly find this to be a very interesting topic. It's crazy once you look back and think about how much things have changed since that day in January 2006 when the MacBook Pro was first introduced. 13 years and so many recall programs. I can't even list all of them. But granted, there have been some really impressive gains. The 2019 MacBook Pro with the Core i9 can outperform the 12-core trash can Mac Pro that was thousands and thousands of dollars. So there definitely has been progress. So as usual, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Which is your favorite model of MacBook Pro? Let me know down in the comments below. And as usual, don't forget to follow me on Twitter @LukeMiani. Please consider joining my subreddit if you have any questions or are maybe looking for advice on which MacBook Pro you want to buy. And with that, I will see you all in the next video.